We started recognizing relatively early on, right, 3 to 4 years on, that there were 2 key challenges. One of those challenges was the clinical. We needed a lot more to be able to get to the outcomes. And the second was the business model. Direct to consumer is a bit of a hamster wheel, right? It's not a good business. And so we saw the combination of clinical challenges and business model challenges. We made the very hard decision to say, you know what, we're gonna shut this down and we're gonna take 104 million down to zero and go through the doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Orthodontist Live. I'm coming to you from a really nice hotel suite here at, what's the name of the hotel that we're at? Do you know?
The One Hotel.
The One Hotel. The One Hotel. It's lovely. And I am joined by the CEO of Oliv. This is Nick Greenfield. We're here at Oliv's launch event, which actually is tonight. I'm kind of excited about that. They were kind enough to set all of this up. What you can't see is there's like multiple cameras and really smart people like running the cameras. I didn't have to set up any of it, which I usually have to. So this is like very nice. So thank you to the Oliv team. Nick, he helped launch Candid back in 2017. As I'm sure all the viewers know, that was a direct-to-consumer clear aligner company. Since then, they've evolved into CandidPro and now into Oliv with no E. And there's a really interesting story behind all of that. And so Nick, thanks for having me, setting all this stuff up, and thanks for being willing to have an open and honest conversation today. Actually, I want to talk a little bit before orthodontics came into the picture, a little bit earlier in your story. I was looking you up online. Now, forgive me if any of this is incorrect, because sometimes I'll look things up online and it'll be wrong. I actually originally had your name completely incorrect, and then it was corrected by one of your team members, so I'm glad I got that fixed. But I saw you studied international relations at Stanford, which is awesome. So where'd you grow up? Why'd you pick Stanford? And then what was your dream of doing international relations, I guess?
I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area,
Okay.
and growing up, I always thought I would be doing something in politics or in international relations, foreign service. I was really interested growing up in that world and went to Stanford in many ways because it's a great school for that specifically. In my senior year, Condoleezza Rice was teaching a class that was all about kind of challenging international diplomatic situations and how to navigate those. And there was, I think you could do one night where you would stay the whole night and kind of wargaming different situations. And so when I went to school, and for the most part during school, I really thought that's what I would end up doing. I originally got interested in Stanford because they were really good at basketball.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, Mark Madsen and Casey Jacobson and those early Stanford teams got me excited. So I got a sweatshirt and I said, I'm gonna go there. And then somehow they let me in. And I went there for all 4 years, which was fantastic. And I graduated school and ended up staying in San Francisco.
Okay.
And at the time, when I graduated, just the where the economy was just coming out of the financial crisis, the startup world was starting to really take off. Mm-hmm. And that's why I ended up working and have worked my entire career in taking companies from the ground up to hopefully building them into really large, successful organizations.
Yeah, it's on my mind, and I have to say it. I think Jessie Spano on Saved by the Bell, she also got a Stanford sweatshirt, I think that's where she was going to go. Is anybody with me on that? I don't know. We'll have to fact check that. That's right. Is that right? Somebody in the back said that's right. Thank you. Okay. Fascinating stuff. So some of these companies, some of them people will know, some of them won't, but you were a part of what was called Zimride, and that ultimately became Lyft. And I use Lyft. I'm a Lyft user. I don't know if you still have like allegiance or you're like, yeah, I'm glad you use Lyft. But tell me, like, what was Zimride trying to solve? And then what was the vision that the early team was sort of rallying around?
Extreme allegiance still to Lyft.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, I figured.
Yes. I'm still a huge fan 15, 16 years later. So the original vision behind Zimride was to help connect drivers and passengers who are going the same direction to reduce the number of cars on the road. Over 80% of cars driving are single driver vehicles, which means that you have tons of empty seats. And the founders of the company said, hey, if we can figure out a way to sell those empty seats, we can take cars off the road, reduce congestion, reduce pollution, ultimately make transit more efficient. And the idea was inspired originally by going to Zimbabwe, which is where the Zimride name comes from, where they have all these vans, and when everybody's going to work or going anywhere, they all pile into these vans, and it's actually somehow they've built this very efficient kind of off the grid system to be able to have that transportation. Ultimately, Zimride as a business didn't actually work because in the US, people are more interested in driving their own cars than they are in sharing cars with other people. And the idea originally was long distance trips would be where people would say, hey, you know what, I'll go in somebody else's car instead of driving for 5 hours. And we found that while it worked in some markets, San Francisco to LA or Las Vegas to LA or maybe New York, Washington, DC area, it was too complicated to coordinate all the different components. So instead, we launched a short distance system, which ultimately became Lyft, and found that this short distance, what's called marketplace liquidity, so having drivers and passengers, was much easier when you were taking 3-4 mile trips, starting Friday, Saturday nights, people going out, they don't want to drive their cars, they want to take a taxi. San Francisco, where we started, had a dearth of taxi availability. It was very hard to get a ride. And eventually it became airport trips and commutes and then everyday travel, and people started giving up their cars. And San Francisco and our second market, LA, the company just took off like wildfire. And this was around 2012, 2013, when the iPhone was just becoming usable to the point where GPS, because they integrated maps and everything into the phone, became part of the way that the world worked. And so I got to be a part of that early experience, and what will lead into the Candid and CandidPro and Oliv story into a business pivot, where it was a venture-backed company going one direction and then found another business that was a better business, better serving both stakeholders, right? The passengers and ultimately the drivers, and became now I think it's a $6 or $7 billion revenue business. Of course, Uber was our top competitor and is a much larger business still, but I still have strong affinity for my early days at Lyft.
Well, I use both, okay, and I really use Uber Eats a lot, and so I'm sorry. So I need Lyft Eats if you'll talk to the team, because I need the food delivered to my home. You didn't mention, I saw it on another interview, but I love not knowing something and learning it later and being like, oh, that makes sense. Lyft is pink because originally it was supposed to be all female drivers, is that right?
Yes, all female drivers, all female passengers. My original job was to get all of the drivers, and we had trouble getting all female drivers. So that idea went out the window very quickly, but the company was built like brand first, operations second. And we thought that we would be able to build that because a lot of the women in our lives didn't feel safe getting in a stranger's car. Yeah. And we thought that if we built a safety first community, that would encourage more women to both be drivers and passengers. And now actually, just a couple years ago, Lyft launched a feature called Women Plus Connect, which is female drivers, female passengers. So it's come full circle, over a decade later.
That's cool, but no more pink mustaches.
No more pink mustaches. I still have one.
You'll have to look that up.
Yeah, in the original wrapper. I'm hoping it'll become, one day a collectible.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. No doubt. That's awesome. So real quickly, last thing about Lyft, it's just, everybody knows Lyft. So proudest accomplishment at Lyft? Is there anything that you're just like uniquely kind of proud of?
I am so excited when I get in a car still and I talk to drivers who've done thousands of rides and this is their livelihood, and it didn't exist. And I sit there, whether it's at the airport looking over everyone's shoulder to see what app they're using, or just talking to the drivers. I'm still so invested in hopefully seeing the long-term success of that business. I'm just really proud of helping create so many opportunities for people.
Yeah, right on. So after Lyft, you were involved with 2 other companies. I'm not familiar with these, but I want to hear about them. You were at Washio, which is where you served as VP of Marketing and Growth. You know this. I'm like, yeah, of course you know this. People don't. And then Paribus, which sounds like pluribus, but anyway, you served as Chief Operating Officer. So tell us just real quickly, what did you learn there and how were those experiences?
Both of those experiences, I think, shaped my view on how to build and run a company. And both were small companies. we had tremendous talent at both. One of them, Washio, ultimately didn't end up working out. I had left before. And Paribus, we sold to Capital One and is now what underpins a big component of what is now Capital One Shopping.
Wow.
And that team has gone on to start many different companies, some incredibly successful businesses in the fintech space. And so I got to see what greatness looked like and just high velocity scaling and how to build a company appropriately. And also in the case of Paribus, how do you actually sell a company and how does that work? And so that's really helped me not just in building what we built over the last almost decade, but also in recruiting talent, in finding the right investors, in understanding what are the things that make companies successful for the long run, and then what are the things that can actually trip you up and make it really difficult to get off the ground.
Yeah, right on. Good stuff. All right, so now we're to the orthodontics part of things. There's a lot of work to get to this part. So you stepped into orthodontics for the first time with the founding of Candid in 2017. And I guess like sort of my question is like, what surprised you about how healthcare differed from consumer tech? And then maybe also like what lessons that you had learned in consumer tech were informative or carried over into that space?
In healthcare, there are 3 different ways to build a defensible business. The first way is intellectual property, where you own a patent, for example, for a medical device or a pharma product, and nobody else can have that product. The second way is just pure economies of scale. You are an insurance company or a hospital system, and you just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the third way is driving better patient outcomes. And when we ultimately figured out what we were going to do, you had Align Technologies, phenomenal company, had the core IP for computer-aided design for moving teeth. And then you had large OSOs and DSOs that had, you know, these economies of scale and big manufacturers that were building there. And so we said, well, what's the one opportunity that we have to do things differently? Because one of the things I had learned in my career earlier on was you got to figure out how to be unique and build in a different way. And so we said, hey, clinical outcomes is going to be the thing that we want to own and help drive for doctors better than any other company.
Drew you to this idea of direct to consumer, and I guess like on some level, like why did you do it? Like what was the?
I think ignorance is probably the what drew me in originally was the opportunity to build a really big business. Yeah. I knew nothing about orthodontics. Sure. And my first 4, even 5 years was just so much learning. And the business was co-founded by an orthodontist. And the idea was to drive higher quality clinical outcomes. So all the things kind of made sense to me. But what I learned over the first 4 or 5 years is all the components that you needed to actually drive high quality clinical outcomes. And the one piece of the puzzle that was missing was the doctor in person seeing the patient. And that was, while clear to perhaps to you and the listeners as orthodontists, as somebody new to the space, the idea of coming in, of somebody who had disrupted the taxi industry, dry cleaning, other different components, it was like, oh, we can figure out how to use technology to solve this entire puzzle. And I think what we learned over over the 4 to 5 year period is there are certain things you can do really well digitally. You can do AI applied diagnostics. You can learn how to market. For example, you can do really great job building and marketing a business. But when it comes to driving the highest possible clinical outcomes, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to not have that hands-on approach, especially when you think about the edge cases. And orthodontics is so much about those edge cases and the combination of science and art working together to drive not just high quality aesthetic outcomes, but also high quality functional outcomes. And that's what I think we learned over the first 4 or 5 years, where we just saw our doctors who we were working with were rejecting so many of these direct to consumer cases that were coming in because they were all orthodontists and they're saying, oh, we're not going to be able to treat this. So in many ways, it made the business not possible, but it also opened our eyes to, if we want to be the company that wins on clinical outcomes, direct to consumer probably isn't the right way to go.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's no surprise to you, I'm sure, but at the time, like, definitely were seen as the enemy as a company, I mean, just in fairness. And it's interesting is disruption, when it's not your own industry, it's seen as sort of exciting and obviously like a good thing. Like as an example, Lyft, Uber, whatever, I mean, the best thing ever as someone who travels quite a bit, you know? And then obviously when it comes to your own front door, it's like, well, hold on a second, you know? And so it was a really interesting time. I mean, as someone that at that point had only been an orthodontist for 4 years, you know, it was kind of scary. It was like, is this like the end of what we do? On this side of it, you know, I'm grateful, honestly, that it failed in the way that it had originally started, you know? But at the time, it was so interesting. So along those lines, I should say, is that direct-to-consumer aligners, they were sort of seen as like the future of orthodontics by a lot of people. And of course, there were those of us, and at the time, I mean, my guesstimate was like, it won't work. It'll work just for this segment. There's so many things it can't do. But of course, you just don't know. And if it had proved profitable or successful, it would have sustained, you know? And so, but I guess ultimately, what was the thing that made you realize you needed to change directions and no longer be direct-to-consumer?
We started recognizing relatively early on, right, 3 to 4 years on, that there were 2 key challenges. One of those challenges was the clinical, which is that, you know, the orthodontists who were part of Candid, because everything that we had done originally was about building technology to help orthodontists better diagnose and treat patients remotely. And they kept on saying, this is getting harder and harder and harder as they were seeing more and more case results coming in. So we saw that, and we recognized that we needed better diagnostics, we needed an in-person element, we needed there was patient monitoring, right? We needed a lot more to be able to get to the outcomes. And that manifested into, okay, well, we need to deliver this actually through a dental office, right? Which is where CandidPro ultimately went. And the second was the business model, which is the business model of direct to consumer, where you are reducing the cost of treatment to drive the demand of patients up, and you're just having to acquire patients over and over and over and over again, is a bit of a hamster wheel, right? It's not a good business. And all direct to consumer, not just in ortho, but all direct to consumer businesses, starting in probably mid to late 2021, really ran into a wall. We recognized that, I think, before others. Our 2 major competitors that were in the space, one acquired by Dentsply Sirona, the other Smile Direct Club, which ultimately went bankrupt. I think it took them longer to figure that out. Yeah. And so we saw the combination of clinical challenges and business model challenges. We were over $100 million in run rate revenue. So the business was a sizable business, 750 employees, 40 plus retail locations, 2 manufacturing facilities. I mean, this is a real business, right? And we made the decision because of, yes, the business model, but also we want to build something that can last as a generational business and be a long-term compounding business. We made the very hard decision to say, you know what, we're going to shut this down, and we're going to take $104 million, which is our peak, down to 0 and go through the doctor, which at the time was less than $1 million in run rate revenue. We'd started working on it, but we knew that we had an amazing product and a culture that could deliver a long-term compounding business. It would just take an extra decade than we thought it would take before.
How do you make that decision? Like, is that like to shut down a business that's doing $104 million? Like, is that like a board thing? Is that like, I mean, were you the key driver on that decision? I mean,
yeah, the decision came from me. Okay. It came through lots of thought, right, on what was happening, and then driving buy-in, right? So we had a board of directors. We obviously still have a board of directors. It looks very different now than it did then. We had an investor who had invested significant capital into the business recently under a business plan that we believed in at the time, but recognized over a short while that it wasn't going to work. And it was 3 or 4 months of me like beating the drum and saying, like, guys, this is the right thing to do, right? Wow. Sometimes there's the easy things to do, and sometimes those are also the right things. And then there's the hard stuff you got to do sometimes. And this was one of those hard things, but definitely the right thing to do. And some of our early orthodontists who were involved in the early direct-to-consumer development were super supportive of this, to the point of really helping encourage. And I think that interestingly, after about 6 weeks, most of our board members were like, yeah, this is the right decision to make, because they were in the business of investing in companies that could be, these juggernaut generational companies. And when I showed them what the opportunity looked like on the other side, there was a lot of support for it. So the board got around, and we ultimately, once we made the decision, it took us about 6 months to fully like kind of rip everything out. And yeah, that was over 4 years ago.
Yeah, I remember people sharing the screenshots of Candid's closing, and it was like different emotional response, I'm sure, from your perspective to ours, but it was like seen as like a little victory of sorts for the orthodontist. I know it's more complicated than that, but I just remember that moment. Y'all were the first sort of domino to drop in a lot of ways in the direct-to-consumer space. I'm sure I'm missing something, but
I think it was a victory. I think it was clearly, and it was deserved, right? But that's like, we learned from that experience that orthodontics should be practiced in the professional office.
Yeah.
Right? And we're going to talk about Oliv in a bit about kind of how that has continued to evolve. But yeah, I think that it definitely was an appropriate, the feeling of being victorious there was like, for sure.
Yeah. So a couple questions about just CandidPro before we get into Oliv. When you launched CandidPro at this point in time, was it 2021 you said?
We started in 21. We officially made the pivot in 2022.
Was general dentistry always the target, or did that just become the reality once it rolled into the market?
The reality was we were launching a product with no 3D controls, no attachments, no IPR. It had been built by one engineer and one product manager on the side. We couldn't go to orthodontists with that product. What we could do with that product, though, was provide US licensed orthodontists through interdisciplinary care to support general dentists during their treatment planning. Okay. And that's really what CandidPro became, is a conduit for orthodontists to support general dentists with, for the most part, not all the time, but for the most part, mild to moderate treatment that they're gonna be doing with other systems anyway. And we wanted to help them drive high quality outcomes. And so every CandidPro case includes an orthodontist that's helping support during the treatment planning, because we believe at our core, and we believe this, and I think that that's where we're going, is that orthodontics should be practiced by the professional and who really understands how to move teeth, because so many general dentists get in trouble and they lack the clinical capabilities to deliver high quality orthodontic care. Yeah. So we started there, and then we built more and more features and capabilities to support people. But we heard from the orthos who helped us really get everything going that we needed to build so much more for them to actually want to use it in their practices.
Got it. Well, I'll just say this as an aside. You may not know this, but you actually learned just as much about orthodontics at Stanford as general dentists do at dental school. So anyway, sorry, just a little joke. I guess, so now we've got, this established CandidPro is GPs, but again, supported by orthodontists. What made you decide, and how did you come upon the decision that, orthodontists, they need their own thing, they need their own brand, they need their own platform, rather than just kind of grafting them into CandidPro or something like that?
We knew, first of all, that orthodontists really didn't like Candid. And I think that was a starting point. Yeah, like starting point if we wanted to build something, that we needed to think from the ground up, and that whatever we would build, the bar would be higher. Right? So we know the bar for our company is significantly higher than the bar is for anyone else, because of the negative brand value and history and association with who we were. Not who we are today, but we will be judged for our entire history. And we would love people to just judge us for now, but the reality is we have a history. So we wanted to build something that would be the highest quality clinical outcome product in the market. And the orthodontist that we were working with also said, hey, we want to work with you, but we can't work with you if it's Candid, and we can't work with you with the current product. And we went to one of our core advisors, Dr. Lou Schumann, and Lou helped us think through this and then introduced us to Clark Colville. And Clark is one of the founding orthos for Oliv. And I met Clark over 3 years ago, and we set out together, and then Dr. Jeff Sudit, who joined as well. And we really created a 3-year game plan to building what would become Oliv, which turned me from being the CEO of the company into really the chief steward, where my job was, how do I enable first Dr. Sudit and Dr. Colville, and then the rest of the organization, and we've built out now over time to about 50 orthodontists, to make every major decision in the product that they want. And that's where this really came together, is this was not about me. This was not about our company. This was about how do we build the best possible product that is driven and thought about and launched by orthodontists for orthodontists. And it's the only way that we know that we can build something that can be long-term, winner in the category.
So let's talk kind of nuts and bolts now. CandidPro, Oliv, what are like the key differences in those product offerings? Philosophy, I think I kind of understand the difference, but like just systems and all that goes into it, what the patient receives, like what are those key differences?
Let's start with the Oliv side, which is everything about the Oliv software experience is custom designed for the needs of the orthodontist. We, from the diagnostics and the case flow submission process to these templates that we've provided where our orthodontists who are using the product today can set up both their individual templates of how they want to set up different case types, all the way to being able to share those templates with the rest of the community. So a doctor who's highly experienced, who's got 25 years of in-office clear aligner experience can share those templates with somebody who's just starting practice and doesn't know how to do aligner. So how do you leverage the historical knowledge that's built in? The second component there is then on the monitoring front. So we included dental monitoring as a standard. It comes in every box. It comes with a scan box, and it comes with a concierge service to help manage the monitoring. We know that many doctors are really interested in implementing DM, but it requires sometimes a DMC, a dental monitoring coordinator. It requires investment. It requires upfront cost, buying scan boxes. And we've seen that be such a powerful tool to helping doctors drive better outcomes. But we also know they need a concierge service to go with it to help them manage those cases as they're getting started. So that was included, standard, no additional cost. And then community, which on the community side, as I mentioned, templates are a great example there. We built this product over 130 virtual meetings with our team, with all the orthodontists who are part of this, 6 in-person summits, more one-on-ones that I can count, all designed and developed from the packaging, the branding, the Dob kit that goes into the packaging itself, the name, the website, the 3D controls experience. It's all totally custom tailored to the needs of the orthodontist, which are just completely different than the needs of the general dentist. Everything for orthos is about customization and control. And everything for the GP side is about standardization and like singular approach, right? Yeah. And so we understand that what we've built is even more so geared and designed around the orthodontist than what other groups have done, because every other company that's out there is thinking about how do they serve 2 customers.
Sure.
And our company motto is customer obsession drives profitable growth. And that means that we need to obsess over the needs of the orthodontist, who just frankly is a very, very different stakeholder than the general dentist. And so that's how we designed and built around that customer.
Will general dentists one day or even like today, can they use Oliv if they want to?
So today, the goal is to keep CandidPro for general dentists, and we'll keep improving features and capabilities for that customer. And Oliv is designed and built around the orthodontist. There's obviously historical, regulatory, and legal constraints, but our goal is really to make sure that we push the orthodontic community into the Oliv product, and we push the GP community separately. Again,
I get it. Good luck. You know, I mean, good luck with that. That's tough, but that's cool. Honestly, that history, it's singular to you and your company, so kudos for that. And I've heard great things from people who are using Oliv or have been using Oliv. So, it remains to be seen sort of how that goes. But it'll start to feel like an infomercial. So I'm like, kind of like wary of doing it. But this is like the box that it comes in. It's really sharp. It's really cool too, just to see the different ways that now new aligner companies are approaching packaging and the delivery of their systems. And so I was looking at this earlier. I'm gonna put my script down. Again, feels like 1 a.m. as a kid watching an infomercial. Well, this is not good. There we go. Okay. It was just, I had to grab this out. There's like this cool little bag. And like you said, each one comes with like, these are like what, Chewies kind of. This is like the scan box. It's kind of cool. Got some like whitening foam. That's nice. And then you got to have like your little aligner case. I think it's got like a little mirror in there. Can the viewers at home see? So it's pretty cool. It's great. And then the aligners are up top. Kind of pull those out. So I guess that was probably like iterative of a lot of different conversations too.
Probably 15 different box designs.
Nice.
And again, what we found is that orthodontists are just so aesthetic. In everything they care about there is thought that goes into each different component. And we think that brand and the quality of the brand and the quality of the packaging can be reflective of a practice.
Yeah.
And there's just so much iteration on kind of nailing this box, which is a totally different box than exists in the industry. You usually get this like kind of flimsy cardboard box, and we have this incredibly robust box that we believe is representative of the highest quality care and the highest quality practices.
Yeah, and it's interesting with all these, like, I've shifted aligner provider, and you're somewhat fearful as an orthodontist that as you do that shift, that patients are going to be really upset. And it comes up occasionally, but for most of them, they trust the doctor, they trust that relationship above the product that's being offered. But having a nice, sharp box doesn't hurt.
We hear from our practices that when patients walk out the door holding that box and somebody's using a different brand, they say, I want that.
Yeah, it's cool. Well played. A few more questions here. So orthodontists, we've seen aligner companies that have made decisions that certainly weren't always in the best interest of the doctors, and selfishly as a doctor, like, hey, I don't like that, but also arguably for patients. There was a lot in fairness to Candid and Smile Direct Club, et cetera, patients would come in who were damaged by that experience. And so how can we now as orthodontists, and you brought this up, you've been very transparent about it, but how can we now trust that Oliv is committed to orthodontist-led care for the long term?
I think the first place to look at is how we built Oliv, which is with 50 orthodontists who have helped make every single decision across the board for the company. And they believe in what we're doing because they've gotten to know us and how we are thinking about the world. And that's where we want to be. We know that there will be other trends and fads that come, but we are deeply aligned through and through with the company, with building with the idea that orthodontist-directed care is the way that orthodontics should be delivered. And I think it's, again, reflective of every decision we've made in the business for the last 4.5 years as we've gotten to know how everything works better. And we've integrated, I believe, now really the right people to be the advisors and the consultants to help us think about this and do this the right way. So as long as I'm at the helm, you definitely have that commitment.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. So looking at the broader dental landscape, do you think that dentistry and orthodontics, I think I know what your answer is going to be based on what you said, but should they remain distinct ecosystems, or do you see a future where those lines blur again?
I think from a product standpoint, I think that dentists and orthodontists need different things.
Yeah.
And that the challenge of providing high quality orthodontic care, especially as cases get more and more complex, requires a specialist, right? That is an important component. And I believe that the referral pathways are also really important that exist between dentists and orthodontists. But I also recognize that dentists are going to continue to want to do cases, especially as they bring more and more into their practice. And I believe that they need orthodontists supporting them to be able to do that, especially as things get more challenging and they need to refer those cases out. So I think that there is a unique opportunity to be the company that can deliver the highest quality possible product for orthodontists and also provide hopefully a real referral pathway and network where you can kind of keep building and growing orthodontics. We know that most patients are not diagnosed that are sitting in the chair, especially as adults. And most patients are not treated. And there's tremendous opportunity to grow the overall size of the pie. And I think that Oliv can help both with youth orthodontics, but I think we can also help grow that pie on the adult side as well.
So is that like a formal plan of being able to have like referral lines from CandidPro customers to Oliv, orthodontists? Is that?
Yeah, we're seeing it today organically, right? We're seeing that that happen. And I think as we get larger, as I said, today we're 50 orthodontists.
Sure.
We've been building, at smaller scale. I think as that business grows and we go from 50 to 200 to 500 to 1,000, there's so many things that we can build from a technology standpoint. And the system is set up today to do that. Yeah. So we have the technology, but as it gets bigger and we have more places where folks can drive 5 miles or 10 miles, then yeah, we have the ability to do all kinds of stuff.
Cool. All right, last couple questions. For you, what does success for Oliv look like in the next 3 to 5 years?
I want Oliv to be recognized as the best community for orthodontists to be a part of, to learn and get better at driving the highest quality orthodontic care. And we want to remain committed to our mission around intentional delivery. We believe that the highest quality clinical outcomes will come from leveraging the data through our partnership with dental monitoring and all the manufacturing work that we're doing to get the best possible quality product. But we believe that the orthodontists who we're working with are going to continue to drive us there, and community is such an important part of that. So I could see Oliv over the next 3 to 5 years growing organically and growing well and continuing to develop. But I think it's the foundation that we are going to lay over the next 3 to 5 years that will create the generational opportunity that I believe. Today we're in the US, maybe a little bit of Canada. And I think that in the next 5 years, I'd love to see Oliv available the rest of the world.
Cool. Well, best of luck with that. And I guess if you've got an orthodontist out there that's like, I'm interested in learning more, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Go to olivortho.com, O-L-I-V, ortho.com, and you can enter your information there. We'll reach out. We have a very small team, super nimble, and their job is just to speak with you, figure out whether Oliv is a good fit for your practice and what you're thinking about doing now. And yeah, we'd love to meet you.
Cool. And I should have asked this earlier, but Oliv as a name, is it referencing the color, like that soft green color? Is that right?
Oliv actually came from a combination of things. It stands for orthodontic living or orthodontic lifestyle.
Okay. Yeah. Terrible interviewer. I should have asked this first. Okay.
Originally we loved the name Liv because of lifestyle idea, but olives for us represent just so much more, and the opportunity to create something that is enduring, that can create an amazing kind of lifestyle, both for the orthodontic partners that we work with and also help enable them to treat their patients in the best possible way. For us, it is a memorable name because it's just really different. It doesn't feel like a med tech business.
No, it feels more like a spa or something like that, to me at least. I don't know what you think, but well, it's a good name. I like it. I like the branding around it too. So, all right, so reach out if you're interested in that. Thanks for joining us. This was great. I've never done an interview in a hotel suite. So is this your hotel suite?
This is not my hotel suite.
This is not your hotel suite? Okay, well, it's kind of a weird question to ask when the answer is no. So it's like, whose is it? I don't know. But it's been a great conversation. Seriously, thanks for being willing. I mean, I have done a couple interviews with CEOs, and oftentimes it has to pass through legal and it has to be chopped down. We can't ask that. No one told me what to ask or what not to ask. So seriously, thanks for doing that and being open about it. I think it will be to your benefit for people to actually be able to hear the story and hear the reasoning and hear why we shifted and all that, and just get it out there. I think it'll hopefully serve you really well.
Yeah, I want people to know the truth and know the history. We don't want to hide behind that. Brian Anderson, who I'm sure you know.
I know Brian.
From your band.
Yeah, from our band.
Yeah, so Brian likes to talk about the story. He's been part of this with us for almost 3 years now as well. And he likes to talk about the phoenix rising from the ashes and second chances. And
very Brian
for the opportunity. But I think that it's important, right, is that we know we started in one way, in one direction. And as I said, ignorance, right? I knew nothing going into it. And I think we came back and we said, we can do this the right way. We put our money where our mouth was in doing that and really burning the business down to zero. And I think we've come back with Oliv with something I'm super proud of. It's probably you asked what was kind of most excited or most proud of in the Liv story. I think the launch of Oliv for me is probably the most proud I've been of any work accomplishment in my career.
Wow.
And I hope that doctors who are listening are interested in learning more, and they know the story, and they know we're willing to listen as a company because we always want to get better.
Great answer. So I was going to pitch the AAO, and we talked before the interview about I mean, this launch is so new that you won't be at a booth at the AAO, but you do have a dinner, right?
We'll have a dinner.
Yeah, is that something that if people are like interested, they can reach out about, or not really?
If you put in your information on the website, we'll reach out and we'll let people know. We're organizing a dinner. We weren't ready for AAO yet this year. We weren't sure if we were going to be launch ready. So hopefully we'll be there next year, but we'd love to meet folks at the AAO if you're there.
Cool. And then the AAO 2027, you'll be there.
We'll be there.
Yeah, wherever that one is. I'll be at the AAO. I think a lot of you will be too. It's in Orlando. It's usually like a huge meeting. I have a booth now that has like 3 names. And so it's like Ion, but also Hip and Neon Canvas. It's just one booth, but I'm really excited about it. Please come by the booth. We have a lot of new things that we're going to be talking about. Also, Saturday, May 2nd, which is the day before my birthday, I'm going to be lecturing on the topic of practice overhead at 12:30 p.m. Feels like a lot of detail. I hope if you're around and you say, hey, Kyle's speaking, come see me speak. I'd love to see you there. Would love to try to fill the room. And then lastly, thanks to, what is the name of this video team? It's Canopy?
Canopy Studios.
Canopy Studios out of Chicago. They were awesome. I mean, they mostly just sat there, but what else are they supposed to do? But thanks to them. Thanks also to, I have a team at TDO that helps me make all this possible, so thanks to them. And the team at Oliv, who made today possible, paid for all this stuff. Thank you, Oliv. And from all of us here at the Digital Orthodontist Live, I'm Dr. Kyle Fagala, signing off.